All right, we're going to call to order our workshop Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, 5 p.m. Declaration of a quorum, 7 members present. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Brings us item C, hearing of citizens for the workshop. I believe we have any registered for this one. Brings item D, number 1, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to naming Tasby delegate and alternate for 2024 Texas Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly. So we have the Tasby conference coming up at the end of September in San Antonio this year. We need to make sure we have a delegate and an alternate selected. I do know Ms. McAdams has shown some interest in serving in that role, but I definitely wanted to open it up for conversation. If anybody had any interest in serving in any of those roles as well, because we do have to make sure we vote on that and have that appointed here today before we leave next month.
Obviously, I've done it a couple of times, and the other particular reason I asked to do it this year, and again, is because I was on the Legislative Action Committee out of the representative from Region 6, and so to kind of follow that through all the way through to Tasby. But definitely would love somebody to join me as the alternate and learn about it and maybe get more involved.
In that role you're in, pardon me, is it a requirement, mandatory either way for you to be there, or?
They would like you to. It is not officially required. I mean, somebody else could be.
I'm just trying to think, like, if there was anyone that wanted to serve in the delegate role and you would, in a sense, serve maybe in the alternate role, or however y'all want to do it. I know we have 2 new trustees. I don't know who's on. I know I've served on it.
When do you have to arrive?
It's for Saturday only.
Oh, it's Saturday.
The main session per se.
So it's like from lunch till, and depending on how long the delegate assembly goes, but we could have lunch with our own Region 6, and then the meeting goes till 4-ish, 5-ish.
And that's on Saturday, though.
I think
it's always been, I thought.
Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Saturday. Thanks. Sorry.
Okay, I thought for some reason it was before, so
No.
that makes better sense. I mean, I'm willing to be the alternate.
Okay. I do have to have a motion on all this unless anybody has any more comments.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Ben, second by Dr. Payne, and the motion, I believe, to clarify is Ms. McAdams will serve as the delegate. Ms. Iggy will serve as the alternate. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all for serving in that role. That'll bring us to item D2, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the 24-25 budget and tax rate. Ms. Wilson, here we are.
All right. So there are 3 budgets that are required to be legally adopted for a school district. That's going to be your general fund budget, your debt service budget, and your food service budget. And those are the ones that we're going to present to you this evening, as well as the tax rate. So the first thing we want to look at is the general fund budget and the assumptions associated with that budget. As you all know, we've lost ESSER funding starting September 30th of this fiscal year, and that's going to be a huge increase to our bottom line of our budget because there were multiple positions in those funding sources. We're going to plan for an increase in utility cost. Of course, in July, you approved a 2% raise for all pay families with the exception of our bus drivers, which were a 2.5% raise. The reason why we did that, of course, is because that huge increase in the bottom line from $1,750 to $1,850. But beyond district travel, we're going ahead and budgeting at the beginning of the school year for a couple of events that we feel like will go to state. If they do not go to state, that money will roll into fund balance, but it's just to set it aside at the beginning of the budgeting process. There was a reduction in budgets, and you can kind of see that across the board when you look at it overall, of 7% in a lot of our departments, and they worked hard to get those budgets down some, and we'll continue to look at that in the future and see what we can do to even reduce those even further. Additional teacher incentive program. That program has been growing over the years. It grew nearly $1 million from the previous year to this year, and then we're going to add on fine arts this next school year. Therefore, you're going to see that in cost increase a little bit. But you're going to also see that in the revenue side. You're going to see an increase in revenue and an increase in expenditures, and that's going to account for a little bit of that jump that you saw from the previous time the budget was presented to now. Increase in healthcare contribution. That's something we did in that was approved by Amy Draws and you guys in the month of June, I believe. And then minimal enrollment growth. I have some exciting news about that. And then hold harmless funding. So you're going to see that affect the current school year that we're wrapping up, as well as the new school. That's something that hit the formulas late in the game, and that is basically because of that freeze adjustment from 40,000 to 100,000. So what they're doing is going back and looking at that and looking at the loss of funding that the school districts experienced and taking that into Tier 1 and Tier 2 funding associated with the summary of finance. But that's going to be a huge increase in the revenue that was submitted that you saw when we did our compensation plan versus the revenue you're seeing tonight. So if you had some questions about the differences in revenue, that's attributed to hold harmless, and then that's attributed to Texas incentive, teacher incentive allotment.
While you're on the hold harmless, can I just ask that real quickly? That's only for the M&O, not for INS?
It's both.
They are going to do both?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
if you'll look
good.
at the INS in a little bit, there's a little over $2 million set aside there for hold harmless, and that's attributed to over the years when they went from 25 to 40,000 in a homestead exemption, and then when they went from 40,000 to 100,000. What they do for any debt that's already been passed, they hold the district harmless for the loss in funding from decreasing our values.
Okay, great. That's good. Thank you.
Okay. So back to student enrollment, you can kind of look here and look at a historical enrollment. I do want to point out, just because I want to come back with the same number every year at the same time. So what I like to look at is compare every year against snapshot. That gives us a point in time that we can compare our enrollment on a consistent basis so that you can really see what enrollment's doing. So if you look here, last year at snapshot, we were 14,319 students. That was in October, the last Friday in October. That number did increase by the end of the fiscal year. And then you can also look at the ADA. Now, these average daily attendance were pulled off of PEIMS reports at the summer submissions, and you can kind of look at what our average daily attendance has done for our school district. If you look prior COVID, our average daily attendance was 97%. So as we go into these next few years, I think that might be a way that we can kind of look and see what we can do to try to get our daily attendance back up, because we know it not only affects funding, but it affects the learning for our students as well. So I think it's very helpful for us to kind of be mindful of that and see what we can do to get the kids in the classroom, not only for funding, but the most important reason is for education. But we're anticipating a 0.82% increase on enrollment into the next school year. And I think that is going to be doable. I'm going to go back to this slide just to kind of point out. So we've got an actual enrollment of 14,438. On our first day of school, I think it was 14,510 students. Of course, there's some no-shows in there, but compared to the previous year at the same time, we're still up 450 students, 57 students from the previous year at this same point in time. So that's very helpful. We even looked at kind of free and reduced numbers to see kind of where that was lying out. I'm up 205 kids in free, and I'm up 21 kids in reduced. And so we're seeing a little bit of trend in student enrollment on both sides. I think those are both indicators of favorable growth for our school district. Another thing you want to look at a school district, if you hit snapshot at one rate and you end the year at a different rate, that's a good indicator that your district is growing in enrollment. And so that's another favorable indicator for College Station ISD.
Sorry, I want to stop you on that previous. One more quick question on the previous slide. The ADA you put in there for this coming year, it looks quite lower than the others. What was the reasoning there? Are we just...
Well, you busted me because I like to kind of budget conservatively,
conservative.
just in case, so that we can make sure we get, of course, like I said, get 100% of our revenue. And so we kind of budget just a little bit because you don't budget on enrollment. You have to budget, yeah, you want to anticipate the student, so you're staffing on enrollment to make sure you have the correct staff in place, but you only get funding on the kids that show up in the classroom. So that's kind of why I did a little bit of conservative there. Yes, you caught me.
Okay.
I'm sorry. But yes, that's the reason. Taxable property values, you can kind of look at some historical information here. This is another number that you get certified values on one day, and the next week you've got a different value. So it's a continual moving number. So what you're looking at here, just so that we can get true estimates again about what our real growth is, these are certified taxable values. So we call them T2 values. What's important to a school district on a T2 value is this is what they locally assign how much they're going to take off our state revenue. So whatever our maximum compressed tax rate is, they're going to multiply that by this taxable value that you see on the screen, and that's what they're going to say that the College Station ISD has to come up with that money. So that's going to be our local share. And so that's kind of what's important about what you're looking at here. In addition, when you look at these numbers, that's the certified property values. That's really what we're going to collect for debt service as well. So kind of to put that all in perspective, I like to explain it as a cup. Okay, so how we fill our cup size is determined by the students that we have and the means the way we serve them. Some special populations get more funding than others, but when we go through the full formula, we have a cup, okay? And so our cup stays the same no matter what. What determines where the water flows in the cup is determined by your local share, which is the previous screen where you saw you take that times your maximum compressed rate, and then that tells you how much of the state revenue is going to fill your cup, or local revenue that's going to fill your cup. And anything that above your local share that fills your cup is going to be state funded. So all that to say, it's wonderful when tax rates go up, but that does not mean that the district's going to get more funding. The only reason when tax revenue goes, property values go up for a school district, it helps us in our INS, it helps us on our debt service payments, but it can't help us on our data operation. Because if you look at that last cup, if we have more local share than what we have in our formulas, the flow over goes back to the state to help other school districts, but it doesn't get to stay with College Station ISD.
So that's how we've been able to keep local revenue, but drop the tax rate. So who sets the size of the cup?
The size of the cup is set by our formula funding. So what happens is how our students are. So our ADA is one of them, and then you get additional funding for special education kids, GT kids, career and technology, and so that's your tier 1 funding, and then you get tier 2 funding, which is not really formulated in the cups, but that's that enrichment formula. So it's all based on the formulas, if that makes sense. So once our formula says how big our cup is, then that's how we go in there and backfill the cup based on what our local share is, and then anything that our local share doesn't take care of, the state comes in. Now you said that's how we've been able to decrease the tax rate in our debt service account. Yes, that's what you're going to look at. For INS, it really gets kind of tricky because that has gotten to a point where the legislation is setting our tax rate. They set our maximum tax rate. In fact, we have to send it to them to get approval to set that rate. And then the additional pennies on that are called enrichment pennies. 5 of them can be set by the board. 3 of them is a voter tax election, and College Station has that approved. Therefore, that makes up the 8 enrichment pennies. Okay. So this is our proposed general fund budget for right now. So we've got a local revenue at $106 million, which is made up, a majority of that is made up by our tax revenue. The state is going to kick in some of that. That state revenue is made up of our formula funding, but then something called TRS on behalf. It's really a booking. When we go up on raises, you're going to see TRS go up, on behalf go up, and you're also going to see the expenditure go up the same amount. That's just where the state says I have to book the amount of money that they're contributing to teachers. And it's a revenue increase and an expenditure increase, but it's no impact to the budget in a sense, in the bottom line. The federal revenue, we did have to decrease that this year because of the loss in SHARS funding. So you're going to see that, as well as we were taking indirect cost on those ESSER funds to the tune of about $500,000. And so you're going to see that decrease also in the federal funds. Expenditures are coming in about $153 million for a deficit budget of 4.9. Now, I will show you a little bit later how that's really going to affect us, because we're going to adopt this budget tonight, but of course we're going to run on a 10-month budget.
Can I ask if you can go back real quick, the state 40 million, is that the $6,100 we talk about all the time that we're getting per kid?
6160. Yes. And then you get, that's your regular ed kid, and then you get additional funding for the different kinds of services. But yes, ma'am.
Well, but it also, well, some of that is coming, not out of that 40, it's coming out of the local as well. I mean, that's the size of the cup, if you think about it, right? A part of it comes from local, a part of it comes from the state.
Yes. Yes. That is the size of the cup. And then, oops, y'all don't want to hear the cups again, huh? I think accounting can make fun, but you guys might not. If you have on your handout, you're going to look at the next slide, should have some graphs in it, but it's not showing up, the comparative graphs. I apologize for that. I don't know why it didn't pull through, but I really kind of wanted to show you that most of the budgets compared to the previous year are running about the same. The only difference, payroll went up to about 83% of the budget when it was at 82.6 in the previous year, and then there was just a few adjustments throughout that. But mainly I wanted you to see that payroll attributes 83% of College Station ISD's budget. And then as we tighten our budgets, you're going to see that percentage go up. But that's the most important thing in education is our teachers in the classroom. So that's where we should be.
And I know you've brought it up in other presentations, but I guess on a percentage basis, out of that 5 million, how much of that do you think is, I know that the gap term isn't right, but I guess increases beyond our control, like insurance, inflation, and then how much of that 5 million deficit is things that we have brought on ourselves?
I think our deficit, a majority of our deficit is we added positions multiple years ago for ESSER funding, and then those rolled into the general fund this year. That's a majority of what you're seeing in the deficit budget, because we were spending between 2 and 3 million out of ESSER funding every year. The other part of that deficit would be attributed to SHARS funding. The loss of that SHARS funding was about $1 million is what I'm estimating. And so that's going to contribute to some of that. And then you've got a little bit of increase in utility cost. Then, of course, you've got those raises that were a little over $2 million. And so that's really a majority of what you're looking at there as a deficit. We were able to cut cost to keep that down a little bit, but yes, and all in all. Okay, so we'll move on. I just wanted to point out last board meeting, we approved the $2.2 million. That's attributed to a lot of what you're seeing in the deficit. And then I wanted to kind of break out just to show you how well they've done at cutting costs. And so I just wanted to look at the 4 other categories and compare them to the previous year. So you're kind of looking at contracted services, supplies, miscellaneous, and capital outlay. And you can see on a majority of those, there wasn't an increase as much as supplies. And what can be contributed to the supplies is also with those ESSER funding. We had subscriptions out of there that some of them are going to move into the general fund, as well as custodial supplies. We were taking those out of our ESSER funding, and they're moving into our general fund budget. And so you can kind of see most of the increase is sitting there in that supplies account. So this is something I always kind of like to show, because if you took a per student funding, I know we get that $6,060, but this is the total amount we get in the general fund per student and how that breaks out. And so $6,407 of a student cost goes into the classroom, and that is over 60%. And so that's a great number. That's a great number. And that includes our library, it includes the day-to-day operations in the classroom, and then it also includes any staff development that you might have for those teachers in the classroom. So that all sits in a majority of the dollar that you're looking at spent on a child. The other is you've got to take into consideration that next $1,250 is really just insurance for the class, insurance for our campuses, as well as utilities, because that's the maintenance and operation budget, and that makes up a majority of, it's a huge portion of the budget, and that's just to keep the lights on and everything comfortable for learning. The next one you look at there is school leadership with $516, and that's really just our principals and staff on campus. And then the next one follows with guidance and counseling. That's our counseling on the campus. Then you can get into extracurricular activities and then the driving that it takes for the kids to get to school. So you can kind of see a great breakdown of how we're spending our dollar here at College Station. This is just a breakout by function, because when we approve our budget, we're going to approve it by fund and function. And so I kind of wanted just to lay out to you what that means. So instruction is really kind of tells a story that is complete in the classroom. So anything in the classroom, you're looking at 58.15%. If they go to the library, that's your next section. That's 0.95% of the budget. C&I, staff development, that's for us working with teachers directly in the classroom and training teachers. You can see 1.15%. That increased from the previous year, but a lot of those coordinators that were in ESSER funding have moved into the general funding, and they're sitting in that line item. Instructional leadership is actually our instructional leaders here at the central office. Campus administrators, of course, are administrators on a campus. Guidance and counseling are our counseling staff on a campus. Of course, you've got your nurses, your transportation, a little bit of food service, but basically that's just a TRS number that goes back. We would have to increase that if we have some outstanding charges on accounts. Then we would have to move some money in to cover there. Curricular activities, that's all curricular activities. It's not just athletics. That includes band. And general administration is, of course, the next one. I told you the big number, that $1,205,000 per student. That's your plant and maintenance and operations sitting there. Safety and security, this number did go up a little bit for our full year funding for the safety and security on campuses. Of course, that was passed by legislation. They gave us a little bit of money, but for the most part, that's an unfunded mandate. Community services, that would be our community services with our Education Foundation, a little bit of that. And then, of course, we got a few things there. And then the last one is tax appraisal and collection. That's our cost for our appraisal district and collection of our taxes. So our total expenditures are $153,539,356. So moving on, I wanted to kind of point out what that looks like, because we're going to go ahead and approve the 12-month budget, but I want to keep in mind what a 10-month budget looks like, because that's what we're going to close out. So when it gets to the month of June and July, Mr. Neely and myself, who was very instrumental in pulling all these numbers together for us, we'll present a 10-month and a 12-month budget. And we'll keep you informed on how we're going to close out a 12 for sustainability, but then what we'll close out for a 10, so that you'll know how much money will actually go into our fund balance, which is very key, I think, with what's going on. So moving on to debt service. Of course, we talked about that a little bit earlier about the hold harmless. That's affecting our revenue. And then, of course, we went ahead and had that 23-24 bond sale, and you'll see those in our numbers as well. So you'll kind of see a big jump. So you start with the 24-25, and you see that $43 million. That's our bond payments for this next coming year. And you can kind of see where it drops down a little bit. We've had one bond sale of our total bond packages, and then we'll go ahead and sell those in the next few years, which will kind of fill up that line. But the very big positive here is we came to our voters and we said that we would pass no more than 2 cents, and we're at 0.013 pennies right now. And so that's a big positive for the school district. A lot of that is because our property values have gone up, but then we were able to give that back to them in a sense. So we're not going to defease debt this school year, but we did make a larger payment up front to kind of help us get that debt down.
Sorry, can I clarify something else on that one? You were saying, so this includes just one of the bond sales out of?
It includes $94 million.
Okay, so obviously there will be other debt payments when we get around, that's what you were saying, there'll be other, just, and when we sell the rest
Yes,
of
when we
them.
sell debt, you'll see our debt schedules go up. But the positive about this, when you lay this out like, and you can kind of see how it is, we have capacity. So we have capacity to increase these upcoming years to be able to keep that penny down. So if you saw this flat line and I still had bond sales to make,
it.
then you're going to have to see where I'm going to have to increase the penny.
Okay,
But-
so we're not really projecting out, I mean, what's really going to happen, we were projecting before we do the sales. So,
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
got it.
but you can kind of see that we have capacity.
Makes sense, appreciate it, thank you.
Okay. So here's the proposed debt budget for this school year. There's debt services of 43,901, 442. That makes up the previous screen, as well as we have debt service fees. That makes up the difference there. The other is $75,000, and which is a little bit different than what I'm used to in my school district. But a lot of times with these large apartment complexes in College Station, they will get their tax value, and then they'll take it to court and they want to decrease that rate. So we have to refund sometimes. And so that money's set aside for any possible refunds that we have for litigation on larger material properties. Next one is our food service budget. This one did increase, and I want to kind of talk to you about that. There was $613,000 in something called commodity fees. It's another one of those washes on the bottom line, but it should be an increase to revenue and increase to expenditures. We take our commodity report in the month of June and we book that to our books for closing purposes. I went ahead and booked that estimated cost at the beginning of the budget so that we would just be able to plan for it the whole time. So you're going to see a large increase in revenue and expenditures, but it's because that commodity payment is booked at the beginning, the estimate. And then if it fluctuates, and it sometimes fluctuates because it might start out at $500,000, but we have an amazing food service director that really watches anything that's good. If it's good strawberry cups come by or whatever, she's going to go grab that, which is going to increase the commodity cups. And she does an amazing job at that. But there was the increase in healthcare contribution, the 2% raise, and then their bottom line went up a little bit as well. And then budgeted commodities, and then, of course, I think since 2017 is what I'm hearing. We're going to fact check that for you, but we have not had an increase in meal cost. And so that's a big positive. The free and reduced numbers going up, that's going to help the budget as well. So you're going to see a little bit of revenue go up because we get more per funding for a free and reduced gift. But this is kind of the bottom line. We have the local revenue, of course, is up just a little bit. You're going to see most of the revenue increases in those commodities. And then you can kind of see how that plays out. So we're going to look at taxes a little bit. So this is kind of our historical tax rate, and I haven't got, I'm a data geek in a little bit. I want to go back and look at your old audits and see how far this goes back. In my previous district, it went back to 1992. So in 1992 is the last time you're seeing these tax rates be this low. And I know for sure here at our district, because Austin went back and geeked it out for me, it was 20 years. So we know these 2 years that we have here, the 23-24 and the 24-25 was the lowest tax rate that College Station's seen in 20 years for sure. So that's pretty exciting. And it's not going up much this year as a proposed tax rate of 97.29. So just to kind of make sure everyone understands, when we set tax rates, it's kind of crazy for a school district because I can tell you M&O has really 2 tiers, and then you've got your INS, then you have your total tax rate. So just to kind of explain it a little bit more, when you have your general operating tax rate, that's really your day-to-day rate that you're setting to do your day-to-day operations of your school district. Like I said, 83% of our budget is in payroll, and so that makes a majority of what you're seeing for that M&O tax rate. That would be like to you the groceries, house repairs, just minor things like that. And we want to get into more minor repairs coming out of the general fund. The debt service fund is where you're paying off your debt. You have the mortgage, now you've got to pay it off. You've got the new car, now you got to pay it off. So that's what the debt service fund is. So we've passed our bonds, we have our bond debt. That's what we're utilizing those funds to do, pay off our debt. Could go a little bit further in your maintenance and operation tax, because I said the legislation sets our tax rate. Basically, I send information into TEA. They tell me what my max compressed tax rate can be for a school district. It is based on our values, just like they said. There's a 2.5% jump there, and if you look at the 2.5% and you exceed the 2, then they're going to compress you to a minimum. The reason why they're going to compress you, if you guys were back in a long time ago and remember something called, goodness gracious, Dr. Harkrider, you're going to have to help me. It's when we had to, it's recapture, but it's Robin Hood. Thank you. Back to Robin Hood. What was happening in Robin Hood is because my values are so high, I could have a 50-cent tax rate, and then someone's value next to me were not near as high, and so they had to set a 90-cent tax rate to get the same funding per student. So that's what really happened in Robin Hood. Thank you very much. And because of that, they set a floor on our compressed tax rate. So if your rates go up, they're going to set you down to a floor so that we all can somewhat stay consistent between our neighborhoods. And the floor this year, we're set down to the floor. It's 0.6169 because we had a more than a 2.5% increase in our taxes. The next one is your tier 2 funding. We call that the golden pennies. If you want to look at that, that's enrichment funding. That means if you set the tax rate a little bit higher, the state gives you a little bit of a token, because what they're going to do is, although we have a high rate per penny, Austin has a higher rate per penny. So what they're doing is they're going to guarantee me Austin's rate if I set these pennies. Okay, so we get that. That's how if we got $5 million for the additional 3 pennies, and the state kicked in money, and it's because they took our penny to Austin's yield. Okay, so they're enrichment pennies. So the first golden pennies are called golden because they can't recapture on us. They're set at a certain amount. They're not going to recapture those pennies. The next copper pennies, it's at a lower yield per penny. Therefore, if we go out for those pennies in the future, and if the state does not improve our funding, that will be an option for us. And I'm telling you, if the state cannot, we have to educate kids. And those are the copper pennies. However, we will have recapture on some of those pennies. So we won't get to keep. We only keep up to the yield. Anything we collect over goes back to the state. So that's why we like to stay away from those copper pennies, because of what they mean for College Station.
And sorry, I'm going to ask one more thing. Just to clarify, our last VATRE was the last of the golden pennies we could
Yes,
get,
ma'am.
right?
Yes.
Just, right. So,
They were 3 pennies. 5 we can have without voter approval, just board approval, and then 3 are through the Vader.
right. So obviously they required the VATRE too, but but those are done. We've used them.
Yes, ma'am.
right.
They're included. We're not giving them back if all possible. Then if you want to look at comparative tax rate, you've got the 23-24 M&O tax rate at 0.6992. And of course, this year we're suggesting 69.69. Basically, that's your maximum contrast tax rate and then the 8 pennies. And then we've gone up just that 0.013 for your INS tax rate from 2630 to 2760. So all in all, you have a 0.0107 increase in tax rate, just a little over a penny at 97.29. And that's what we're proposing for a tax rate. Okay, so I'm going to be mindful because we talked about this last time, so I'm going to bring it back up. Sustainability, I'm excited about the 10-month budget because that adds that additional money to our fund balance, and that's going to be very helpful. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you the best thing about a 10-month budget is what's going to happen on a campus. It's going to be so much better for our campuses and for our directors that are trying to do business and line up their budget with what's going on in our district. So we have that near 3 months, and we're going to be okay. And then just this historical information on our fund balance, because we do need to get into the point where we're putting a little bit more in there every year based on an increased budget. It will need to just go up a hair every year. So we've got to figure out how to balance the budget. And I think we're going to work really hard to do that. And going forward, that's just kind of going to be our goal. So does anybody have any questions?
Going back to the fund balance, assuming no changes in funding, at what point do we hit the proverbial cliff on, is it next academic year? Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Next academic year. So what we'll continue to do, and I think they've done a great job because I've looked at, that's what I've spent a lot of time. Ms. Cooper back here, Mr. Neely, we have dug through payroll, looked at things that have happened, and I've kind of had to get up to par from what was been going on before I got here. But a lot of things that I've seen is just, they really looked at, and I think Ms. Leifer was very involved in that too, looking at what do we have, are we overstaffed in places? And so they've kind of started doing that, but, and I don't think there's been a huge impact to the budget, because I think like with gifted and talented, correct me if I'm wrong, we went from 13 to 10, but I think that's a really great number. So, but I really think we'll just have to look in that. We'll have to look at every director's budgets and then the campus budgets as well, and then continue to look at staffing needs, make sure that we're equivalent across the campuses, and then make sure we have any fluff. Would you like to add something to that, Dr. Harkrider?
continuing to watch and watch budgets, even though they're 10-month of what we're spending money on, how that's working, and just it's a process we'll go through the rest of this year.
Can I follow up with a question on that? Um, As you mentioned earlier, our overall number is risen, and one of the reasons is something like the TIA rate, because it's an in and out. Do we need to have a bigger fund balance for things like that as well, even though it's kind of an in and out? I mean,
I would say no for certain things like that. The only reason why I'm saying that, because that doesn't get paid until the month of August. So a lot of times you've got to have money in your fund balance just to pay for certain things, like because you have to upfront your money before you get your money based on your payment plan, you know what I'm saying? So you kind of have to watch that for cash flow purposes. And so that's a big part of your fund balance. Another thing is, we'll look at interest tonight. Everything's gone up to a 2% of your value of your building if you get hit by wind and hail. And so you can look at the committed fund balance that I set aside $1 million, and that's just really a start, because we've got to be prepared just in case something was like that was to happen in our school district, because that would be a hit to our fund balance. And so that's a lot of kind of what I'm saying. But when you look at a fund balance and you look at our board policy, it's only set at 3 months, but I don't think we need to dip any further down than 3 months of the total budget.
If I'm reading this correctly, like when you go back to student enrollment, you've been pretty conservative with some of your numbers. There's a chance we could be pleasantly surprised at the end of the year with some
Absolutely.
things and then would lessen our deficit. So do you feel like this is a more conservative budget than years past for this district? I don't know if you've had the chance like to review our other ones.
Okay, so yeah, I like to budget where I think I'm going to collect 100% of our revenue. And then you have to set aside contingencies in your expenditure account. And so I haven't tracked a historical now, because this is a starting point for me. But if you took my historical budgets from my previous district, you would look at my budget and you would say I would collect 100% of my revenue, but I'm only going to spend 98% of my expenditures. So when you look at 98 to 99% of your expenditures based on a $353 million budget, odds are, if you can collect 100% of your revenue, you're going to see that kind of squeeze down, and you're not going to see the full hit. And I think that was brought up by you last time. They might bring a $4.3 million budget to the board. However, you don't see that at the end of the year. And that's a lot of what's going on, is we're trying to hit 100% so you feel comfortable of what's going on at the district, and we're not having to make huge changes during the school year. But we've got to have a few contingencies set aside. For example, in this budget, I've got, I hate to say this out loud, but I have 2 bands going to state. If 2 bands don't go to state, that's going to be a savings. You know, there's just little things like that that are built in, that we've got that money set aside for great things. But, you know, if they don't happen, that money goes against that deficit.
You just guaranteed they both make state now, which is great. So we're good.
But you know,
I didn't want
that's
to jinx anything either, you know. But
that's
it's
important
right.
because I know we're as parents, we're hearing about budget cuts, and we, you know, that number's in this, in the activities and all funds and things like that. So it's really important and good to hear that we're saving as a district for some of those kind of things, so those groups don't get left out when it comes.
I think when we look at all budgets, and that's something that I'm big on, is we're going to do something that's least impactful to a kid, because that's why we're here. And so that's what we're going to look at first, is what's least impactful for a kid, and that's what we'll hit first. And I think from working with this leadership group, they have the same thoughts, and so I don't think that'll be a hard one to follow.
I'll just do a quick add. I really appreciate the layout of the numbers and in really directly using the budget codes. I mean, because that gives us a consistency from year to year to look at those specific buckets. So I mean, that's the same codes we use every year. So I think that's a lot of things in that were helpful. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's great how excited you get talking numbers. So good job on that.
I didn't start out by telling y'all accounting can be fun. I was trying to
Right.
talk y'all into it. All right, thank you guys.
That'll bring us to item D3, consideration and discussion related to memorandum of understanding for the 2024-25 school year. Lynn College for High Schools, Career Technology Education Center, TAMU Hotel and Conference Center, Lynn College P-Tech, Britt Rice Electric Apprenticeship Training Program. Ms. Parkinson, Mr. Ross.
Good evening, Dr. Harkrider, Mr. Horak, and members of the board. We are here to talk about several of our incredible community partnerships that we have in College Station ISD that will be actually up for your approval during tonight's board meeting on the consent agenda. So the first of those is our partnership with Blinn College for academic and some technical dual credit at all three of our high schools. The last time we approved this MOU was 2021, and there have been some significant changes since that last approval. The first of which is that Blinn College has chosen to participate in the Financial Aid for Swift Transfer or FAST program, which provides funding for participating public institutions to offer dual credit courses to educationally disadvantaged students at no cost for those particular students. And so that is the higher education term, educationally disadvantaged. We call this group of students our students who are economically disadvantaged, students who are on the free and reduced lunch program because of the FAST program, then qualify to attend dual credit classes at no cost for them through tuition and also with their textbooks as well. So this also has benefits for all of our students because it sets the tuition rate to be the maximum tuition rate that can be charged to any of our students in College Station ISD, which for this year is $56.87 per semester credit hour. All right, so currently in College Station ISD at our two comprehensive high schools, we offer 6 hours of English dual credit as well as government and economics. And then we have a variety of technical dual credit that varies from year to year based on which of our CTE courses are offered that year, which ones make. And then it also is based on our teachers and their backgrounds and what certifications that Blinn will grant to them to be able to give our kids technical dual credit. At College View High School, we have up to 42 hours, which is about 14 courses that are available for students through the Collegiate Academy to take there. I think it's important to note that at College View High School, we do not offer any advanced placement courses, only dual credit. However, at the comprehensive high schools, we offer 21 advanced placement courses in addition to those dual credit offerings there. Okay. And then Mr. Ross will also share a little bit more about our PTech program at College View High School, which has to have its own separate MOU to meet those requirements. Okay. So we have on the agenda this evening 3 different MOUs. We have to have one per high school, and it gives us 3 options for our tuition. For academic dual credit, this first option will be applicable to most of our courses at this time. And that is that a non-FAST student will pay the state of Texas approved tuition rate for the current academic year, which was around $56 as I showed you previously. Okay. There are some circumstances where we have an instructor who is a CSISD employee who is providing that dual credit opportunity, and they are not receiving any additional compensation from Blinn. That would lower that tuition rate down to $20 per credit hour. And the district would also receive a $500 reimbursement of service. I think that as we expand dual credit programs, we'll have more courses move into that second category of academic dual credit long term. And then with technical dual credit, if it is one of our own teachers that Blinn has certified for the course, and if that person is not receiving any additional compensation from Blinn College, then the tuition is waived. And so that is really beneficial to our kids as well. All right, so what does this really mean? I think this might be the most important slide in the deck here for the changes. This is a decreased cost for dual credit for all of our students in CSISD who are currently enrolled. So on our 2021 MOU, our tuition rate was $92 per credit hour and also included a general fee component as well. So last year for English 1301, it would have cost $318 for a student to take that course for one semester. This year with the changes, if a student is paying out of pocket with that new rate, it would be $170, $170.61 to be able to take that course, which is a significant decrease of great benefit. Also, as we continue forward and if we are able to expand our offerings and have more of our CSISD employees who are providing the courses with dual credit, we could have students taking a course for as low as $60 for a 3-hour course under this MOU. It gives us lots of opportunity as we move ahead. I'd also like to remind you that all of our students who are economically disadvantaged are able to take these courses with free tuition. And then also part of our partnership is that we, as a school district, also help fund their books as well. Okay. And as I've said a couple of times, but I want to reiterate, we also have the opportunity through this new MOU to explore expansion of dual credit classes at both the comprehensive high schools and then also through College View as well. It gives us a lot of flexibility. All right, I believe that ends my portion. If y'all have any questions about the new Blend MOU.
Well, two things. Just, is it state or federally funded for this program? Do you know? Is it, do y'all know?
Federal? Okay. Mr. Goolsby is saying federal.
Federal, okay. It's because it sounds wonderful, really does. And so I guess then the follow-up is, as you said, do y'all have any more to offer on the exploring expansion? I mean, obviously we have not done a lot of dual credit at our comprehensive high schools in the past, but do you think those will be mostly CTE or other, or who knows?
You know, I think that most of those would be academic dual credit, really, when we're looking at it. When we look at comparable high schools to our two comprehensives especially, there's a greater menu of options. You know, you are well acquainted with the changes that we made to EIC local with our GPA policy. That group of students who has dual credit included in their GPAs they are currently sophomores. So I think as we're planning forward, we need to look toward their senior year and making sure that they have more opportunities beyond English and government and economics. And so Dr. Harkrider and I have had some initial conversations with our partners at Blend, and I look forward to bringing on our new coordinator for GT and advanced academics. Vicki Murphy's responsibilities have changed into that conversation so that we can make sure that we have more options that are available. I also think, you know, we have, I said 21 AP courses at the two comprehensive high schools. Our AP program, in my opinion, would continue to be strong. We have a lot of students who choose to take that advanced, locally designated advanced course junior, senior year, and I think some of these dual credit classes might be an avenue to replace our locally designated advanced courses and make sure that more of our students are leaving our campuses with more college credit.
Yeah, that's great.
We'll have future conversations on the academic side of dual credit. I've had more success if it can be our faculty and that has the certification to deliver to our kids because they're part of our campus. The kids see them every day. It has nothing to do with adjunct folks coming in and teaching kids, but we've just had our kids have been more successful with a faculty member as part of our high school staff being able to teach that dual credit. The certification kind of gets tricky, but that's stuff that we work with, whether it's Blend, whether it's A&M, on what that looks like.
That's great, and it's cheaper, right, if it's our own.
All right, Mr. Horak, Dr. Harkrider, members of the board. My name is Kevin Ross. I'm your CT director for the district. And like Ms. Parkerson was saying, we have some MOUs. We kind of cross over in some of the dual credit opportunities. Our MOUs, our memorandum of understanding, are basically our contracts allowing our students to go out into the private sector to learn outside of our walls. So one of our first ones to talk about is our Texas A&M Hotel. This has been a fantastic partnership over the last 2 years. This will be our third year going into it. This is for our College View students and our hospitality program. They'll rotate in front office, conference center, banquets, room divisions, maintenance facilities. We bus them over there twice a week, and that get hands-on learning. And again, we'll be asking for that renewal from you guys later on this evening. Our what we call our P-Tech, this is something that's been at College View. This will be our second year of technically the P-Tech, but it's been going on for this will be our third year. This is for our students that we bus over to Relis. They are learning all the hands-on, the trades. Facilities engineering technology is our term for it. For most laymen out there, it's a little plumbing, a little electrical, a little bit of sheet metal, really getting into the trades. And this gives us that opportunity for those kids to get that dual credit. There's a couple of things that cross over into what Ms. Parkerson was saying in that MOU as well. With that dual credit, the FAST system, things of that nature. And then the last one on my list is our Britt Rice Electric Apprenticeship Program. This has been going on for many years in this town. It's been a great opportunity for Texas Workforce Commission to have a certified apprenticeship program in a town, a city. You have to have an LEA, a local education agency, to oversee that grant. We've been overseeing that grant probably about 15 years now. It's just another great opportunity for our community to really work on those trades, and we just oversee it. We do a lot of the paperwork. We do a lot through human resources. We do a lot through our business office, just kind of the checks and balances of any grant. And those are mine. Any questions for me?
Just for cheerleading purposes, what are the outcomes of the Britt Rice Apprenticeship Program and the A&M, the hotel center?
So they're really apples to oranges comparison. The Britt Rice grant, we don't currently have any K through 12 kids in it. It's usually when kids graduate high school. We, again, serve as that LEA in order for them to get that grant through Texas Workforce. We work side by side with them. We try to funnel kids to them when they graduate. We absolutely respect what they're doing. They're doing a phenomenal job. But as far as that goes, it's really a pass-through. On the other side with our...
But I think it's a community service because we're a community resource.
Oh, absolutely.
And then they're apprenticeship and they're going into a job. Right
Correct.
after. Yeah.
And it's what you hear about with a true journeyman, the license. They handle it. They have 4 years. We audit all 4 of those classes. It's part of the details of the grant. And they have a tremendous school. It's literally over there. Most of y'all know off Longmire, that giant facility. They have their own school that they teach night school. They have their own electricians that are actually the instructors. And then you'll every now and then, if you look on our website, you may see a Britt Rice apprenticeship job opening. It's not for us. It's actually passing through for them. We run their background checks and things of that nature. The comparison over to the RELIS, total different thing. Those are our students. Part of the P-TECH program is you have to give kids an opportunity to gain an associate's degree, the 60 hours. You don't necessarily have to obtain it in 4 years because that is very difficult, but you have to do a thing where you basically get them into the blend system or any other community college, and you give them that opportunity to gain those hours. And the big design is when a kid graduates, they are able to walk on to that community college that they've already started. They've already enrolled, they've already done all their paperwork, and then they can continue on and go for that associate's degree if they do. At our level, they usually get a certificate or some sort of level 1 or level 2 certificate that kind of helps them. So then when they graduate, they can continue that path.
I just noticed the 9 through 14. Is that just because I guess you tell me why the 14?
No, it's when P-TECH was designed, a lot of the bigger city schools, you'll see it, and P-TECH stands for Pathways in Technology. So some of the Dallas schools, they're with IBM. Some of the Austin schools, they're with another big corporation. And basically what it's designed to do is 6 years to get a kid an associate's degree, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're paying for that kid freshman, sophomore year when they graduate for it. But they wanted to show that is a 6-year opportunity to get those kids. Good question.
You didn't know we added 2 more grades? Voted on it.
Any other questions? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Isn't there one more slide?
Was there?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry.
Good catch.
Sorry.
Good catch. My last one is the Brian C-TECH. Thank you. Our Brian C-TECH, we've started this about 3 years ago. We bus kids over for automotive welding and for our industrial engineering and robotics. That has gone very well over the years. This is something that we've been utilizing because we just don't offer these programs currently in the district. It's been very successful. They are our teachers. We literally bus the kids over there 5 days a week. They do grades, they do attendance. This is one that we do pay tuition. Tuition is basically a wash for ADA in order to pay for that tuition. So hopefully kids show up to school, they want to do it, and what we would have collected in that ADA, that is what we send over to them. Right now, we do have kids busing as we speak. We have 39 of them. Last year or the year before when we presented, we were about 60 kids. So it kind of fluctuates 60, 30. Bryan C-Tech is a junior, senior year program only. So they won't take our freshmen and sophomores. And that's how you'll kind of see some of the dip of our enrollment, because once we allow them as a junior, then we have to allow them to go back as a senior. But it's been really good. We've had 80, 90% pass rate on our industry-based certifications for our automotive kids, our ASEs, our welding kids, AWS. So it's been very successful.
And anybody that hadn't seen that facility, that's an awesome facility. So thanks to Brian and for that, men for coordinating. It's a huge resource that we're not all by ourselves to have those kind of resources. It's a lot of land that they put that on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of my favorite things too. And the example that we are, saving tax dollars really because we are able to share that joint facility. They're all fabulous programs.
And it's going
as well.
good. The drawback is at some point we hit capacity, right? They're going to need more room. We're going to need more room. That'll be the ebb and flow of this. And at some point we may have to look into that. But right now, this year, we're busing. Now I think that's it, Mr. Horak.
Click free. Okay, no more.
All right. Thank y'all.
All right, that'll bring us to item E, adjournment. And see y'all back here for the regular meeting.
Hello?
Yep.
Welcome, everybody, to the College Station ISD Board of Trustees regular meeting, Tuesday, August 20th, 2024. I'd like to call to order a declaration of a quorum, 7 members present. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to this meeting of the College Station Independent School District Board of Trustees. We are elected at large to represent the interests of our community and our state in educating our students. Our mission for our students in this district is success each life, each day, each hour. We adhere to all pertinent laws, policies, and procedures in posting agendas and conducting our meetings. The detailed agenda information was made available to us at least 72 hours in advance. We've all come to this meeting informed and prepared. We have just completed a workshop meeting where we heard reports and discussed much of the information needed to make decisions in either this meeting or in upcoming meetings. This is a meeting of the 7 trustees in a public setting rather than a public meeting. As such, public comment is included on the agenda at a specific time and requires us to listen rather than take action so as to abide by the Open Meetings Act. We are pleased that you have taken the time this evening to join us. We are very proud of this school district. We thank you for your interest in and support of our students. That will bring us to recognitions and our pledge.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Luther, and I'm the coordinator for our extended school year program. I have some students to introduce. This is Barron Smith, and he's a Riverbend Bear.
Hi, my name is Alex. I am 11th grade and I go to A&M Consolidated High School. Let's get ready to rumble.
I am Elena. I go to College View High School, and I am in Bridges. It's time for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. Now for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated.
Okay, let's take a picture.
All right, that'll bring us to item C2. We want to recognize the artwork at the back of our boardroom by the extended school year and summer day campers, finishing up their summer before we hit back into school. So they did some great work over the summer. So make sure you check that out. Next will be C3 PLC presentations.
At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Rocco Grande, principal at Oakwood Intermediate.
Here you go, guys. Thank you. I want to thank the district for providing the opportunity to Oakwood's Guiding Coalition the chance to attend the Solution Tree Summit on PLCs last month. Our team gained several specific best practices and overall guidance on how to enhance our campus professional learning community and our collaborative teams, divided by core curricular subject area and grade levels. Oakwood started the work of creating a campus PLC 3 years ago when we initiated the first multi-tiered system of support coordinators position for our school. We followed the process of collectively establishing the school's vision, mission, collective commitments, and goals. Using both MAP and STAR data, our teams determined within each class the students who needed small group interventions and differentiated instruction to close their achievement gaps throughout the year within each unit of instruction. The summit we attended this summer gave us greater tools and understanding to promote growth in every student and to empower teachers to take the lead in their collab team meetings and in their classrooms. This summer, I learned how elective teachers and teachers in specialized programs can be in collaborative teams. The summit's presenters shared the most modern digital resources available to educators to promote growth for all students across the MTSS spectrum. Our guiding coalition of instructional coaches and administrators gained from that training, and what we've taken back to our campus we're implementing with our teachers. On behalf of the entire staff at Oakwood, I want to thank you, Dr. Harkrider, for instilling in us a greater resolve that the path we have been on remains the best way for us to reach all students and actualize their greatest potentials in the precious 2 years we have them on our campus. If you'd like to ask me any questions, I will remain.
He's remaining if y'all have any questions.
And I can take these off.
Mr. Grande, so y'all have been doing this 2 years?
We've done it for 3 previous years. We started this right after COVID, right in the midst of kind of COVID, is when we first funded a multi-tiered system of support. I think then we called it an implementation specialist and not a coordinator. But having in the master schedule for 8 collaborative teams divided by 4 curricular subject areas and the 2 grade levels so that they could meet, giving them the time was the first step, and then supporting them with that position to disaggregate the data. And the way we started was with interventions, small group interventions, differentiated instruction within the classroom, and mixing it up so that students who did not need remediation also had something that they could achieve independently. When teachers are able to get together and spend the time to do that, and now with more and more experience in it, it kind of gives them the power to take it themselves.
Wonderful. Okay. Anything else? We appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Believe Miss Sherman is going to come introduce. Miss Sherman is our principal at Riverbend Elementary. She's going to introduce her teachers.
Well, Mr. Horak, Dr. Harkrider, members of the board, thank you so much for allowing some of our Riverbend Guiding Coalition members to be here tonight to talk about our experience at the PLC Summit that we experienced in late July. Oh, I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Elena Connor. I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Riverbend Elementary. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Harkrider and the board for allowing us to attend the High Impact Teams Institute in Austin this summer. And I also want to thank our principal, Heather. She used some of our Title I money to send 13 of us to the Institute this summer. And that being able to send that many people meant that we had representation from every grade level, every content, including people from our specialized programs department, which was a really big deal to us. So sending that large of a group allowed that big group of us to hear from the professionals at Solution Tree all of the details of what a true professional learning community is. That really shifted the way we pictured our professional learning community at Riverbend. And so when we came back in August, the Guiding Coalition, we were able to really speak to our teachers on our campus and give them that same knowledge, because there was such a large group of us that were able to share it with each team pretty much individually. And so we're really excited to continue the change that we started in August of what professional learning communities look like on our campus.
My name is Kevin Bradford. I'm a special education resource teacher. I've been at Riverbend since it opened in 2019. In my time as an educator, I've attended many conferences. Most of them were motivating and inspiring, but the High Performing Teams Conference by Solution Tree this summer surpassed all my expectations. In the 3 days of intense, meaningful, and relevant content, focusing on developing successful school teams, the conference was packed with sessions and keynotes that were all connected together and made you want to get to the next session as soon as you were done with the one you were in. It was unique in that there were only 5 presenters for the entire conference. So they were definitely experts in the content and they knew what they were talking about. One session that made an impact on me was titled, "The One Word Every Team Must Understand, Trust." The speaker was very clear that just because a team might get along does not make them an effective or successful team. In fact, it could mean the opposite, because there's not enough trust in each member to say the hard things. She gave us suggestions on how to grow trust within our teams. As a special education teacher, I also enjoyed a session called Making Differentiation Doable, which provided easy to implement strategies for general education teachers that would engage learners of all abilities in the classroom content. He shared one strategy that he called the bin of wonder. Makes you want to know more, huh? But the thing that stood out to me the most throughout the 3 days was the willingness of the presenters to meet and talk with the teams in attendance. Our campus coalition team was able to spend about 30 minutes with one of the presenter experts discussing issues that were specific to our campus and our goals. And who does that? It was definitely a tribute to how invested they were in helping teams grow and succeed. I think Bob Sanju even gave our principal his cell number if we ever had additional questions or ways that he could help support us. Again, who does that? People who are driven to help others succeed. That's who. At the end of our second day of the conference, our principal asked each of our people about our takeaways so far. I recall saying to her that in my 33 years in public education, this was probably the best, most useful, and practical conference I've ever attended. I want to thank you again for giving our campus team the opportunity to attend. And I'll just end with, if you'd like to send us back next year, I'm all in.
Bring us to item C4, staff recognitions.
Dr. Harkrider, Board of Trustees. I'm here to update you on new team members we get to welcome to the district. The first will be Dr. Letty Roman. She is our Executive Director of Elementary Education. She comes to us from Tomball ISD, where she served as the principal of Wildwood Elementary School for 4 years, and prior to that, she was a successful elementary principal in Magnolia ISD. Dr. Roman.
President Horak and Dr. Harkrider, board members, thank you so much for welcoming me tonight. I have been seeking excellence in education for a very long time, and that journey has taken me from teaching in England to North Carolina, across Texas, even getting to partner with Harvard University's Graduate School of Education. But I'm happy to be right back in College Station, where I began learning about curriculum instruction from Texas A&M University the long way around to get back here, but I feel like I have found a home due to all of the people here, and your leadership has just been incredible. So thank you so much.
Our next new team member is Krista Thompson. She is our new Community Engagement Coordinator. She will be joining Austin Dunson's communications team. She's from College Station. She has served as a fitness instructor and a mentor for over 15 years. Mrs. Thompson?
All right. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Thank you to President Horak and to Dr. Harkrider and Sarah and Austin. I'm here with my husband, Patrick. We have 3 kids. We've been in the community for over 23 years, if you don't include our time at A&M. Between the 2 of us, we're both third-generation Aggies. So Maroon definitely is in our blood all the way, with over 48 people between our families that are Aggies. So, but we love the community, very, very excited to be here. So thank you.
Our next staff member comes from El Paso ISD, Ms. Fatima Erring. She is our new PEAMS specialist. She served as an assistant director of PEAMS in El Paso ISD for 7 years. She has 12 total years of experience in teaching and leadership. Ms. Erring?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I love College Station so far, and I'm looking forward to working with Heather and Sarah and everyone. Thank you.
Our next staff member is out sick, Mr. Chad Branowski. He is going to be the new administrative intern at College View High School. That position was a principal position. We recently had a retired staff member, so we actually reclassified that into an admin intern, and he will work closely with Mr. Southard and making sure that students grow at College View High School. He has served as a science teacher at A&M Consolidated for 8 years, and we look forward to supporting him in his new journey. Last but not least, Natalie Pugh-Vela. She is currently was the actual coordinator, of digital learning in College Station ISD. She is now the director of digital learning. She is coaching and supporting 23 teachers on campuses that are actually ambassadors for digital learning. These teachers are taking the forefront of innovative instruction to enhance learning through the digital learning process. We would like to congratulate Natalie on her work the last 2 years in College Station ISD, and definitely look forward to the new processes and the growth that she does with the DLAs.
Thank you. I'm here with my boys, or 2 of my boys, Toby, who is a new graduate of A&M, and Tice, who is a senior at College Station High School. I am thrilled, thank you, I am thrilled to continue growing digital learning in College Station, along with our DLAs and Lauren Finkner, who is our district coach. And we are just excited to continue the collaboration with our technology department within CNI for the growth of our students and teachers.
All right, congratulations to everyone. Welcome. Brings item D1, board reports. I don't know if there's, I know one.
I've got one, yeah.
Go right ahead.
I'd like to share a little bit about Education Foundation because they are off and going strong already. So this year's theme is CSISD Rock Stars, and if you have not seen that video, I highly recommend finding that somewhere and checking that out. But they have visited all 19 campuses to present the employee giving campaign checks back to the schools. And so all of that's been well received, and they anticipate raising over $200,000 with 60% of our CSISD employees participating. And if you don't know this program, that means that 60% of our staff of our district give back to the Education Foundation from what they make, and I think that's because they believe in what the foundation's doing. So also teacher grant applications are open and they're due October 1st, but it's not too early to get your applications in because there's $325,000 designated to be given out in grants. So.
I don't think there were any other board reports yet. Okay. That'll bring us to superintendent update. Dr. Harkright.
Yeah, we got a busy week. Obviously, board meeting tonight. Then the Bryan College Station Chamber Economic Outlook Luncheon is tomorrow. And also tomorrow evening, we have our College Station ISD CTE Ag Center grand opening. It's from 5 to 8. If you'd like to get out there, it's a come and go event, so nothing official. You have to be there right at 5 o'clock. So we're looking forward to Kevin showcasing that facility with all of our teachers and staff members. August 27th, we've got our special board meeting so we can have our Team of 8 training. And then Monday, September 2nd is Labor Day, which will be a staff and student holiday.
Alrighty. Bring us to item E, hearing of citizens. During this time, we will hear from citizens who registered to speak prior to the meeting in accordance with board operating procedures. The Open Meetings Act prevents us from responding to speakers regarding items not on the agenda. Comments related to items on the agenda may be discussed during deliberations on that specific agenda item. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Those needing an interpreter may have up to 6 minutes. Each person has one opportunity at the microphone regardless of minutes used. Unused minutes may not be accrued by another speaker. The executive assistant will time the comments and alert the president when time has expired. The board asks those addressing the board refrain from derogatory comments. I'd also like to add that we want to make sure that the public comments are in good taste and ask that you refrain from identifying any people by name. We will take that up in separate session if need be. Our first speaker listed here is Mr. Stephen Tower. Is he here? Okay. Our second speaker is Stephen Leo Tower. And our third one is Miss Ann Newell Fugate. Okay, those were the only three. And if we don't have those speakers here, we will move on to item F. Consent agenda. Those items are item G, H1, H2, H3, H4, I1 and I2, J5 through J8.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Payne, second by Ms. Simmons. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. That will bring us to item J1, where we will open the public hearing. Public hearing for the 24-25 budget and tax rate discussion. Ms. Wilson.
Sure. President Horick, Dr. Harkrider, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to present on our 24-25 budget as well as our tax rate. So tonight, we have to adopt 3 legally adopted budgets. That's your general fund, your debt service fund, and your food service budget. So the first one we're going to look at is the general fund. So some of the budget assumptions that we put in place when we were building this budget was we had to take into consideration the loss of ESSER funding. So those funding sources went away as of end of September of this next school year. We had to look at an increase in utility costs. Of course, in the month of July, we approved a 2% midpoint raise for all pay families with the exception of bus drivers. The bus drivers were able to receive a 2.5% raise. That was to get them up and be competitive in that pay family. We did budget some additional things in there for beyond district travel just to make sure we have funds available when our teams are very competitive, and we want to make sure that they have the funds available to travel and to compete further than the district level. There are a set of band uniforms in this budget as well as additional teacher incentive program. That's something that's really kind of a wash. It's between it's an increase in revenue, but it's an increase in expenditures as well. So you're going to see both of the revenue and the expenditures go up for that. Our departments worked really hard to try to get the budgets down as well as the campus staff, and they were able to decrease the budget across the board, mainly in those different departments for supplies and contracted services and things by about 7%. That was really kind of their goal that was set out. We did approve in the month of June a health care contribution increase for our teachers, and that was really a blessing for them. We have minimal enrollment growth built in this budget, but I think when you see the numbers, you're going to see and hear what we're starting out the year at. So I think we're going to have favorable growth this school year. And then there's some hold harmless built into the budget. So you're going to see some revenue increases in the general fund as well as in the debt service fund. Both of those are because of the fact there was a homestead exemption increase from 40,000 to 100,000. So this is when they're going in and back in the formulas where if we had a loss in funding due to the increase in homestead exemption, the state has made up some of that adjustment. So you're going to see that some of the revenue numbers. Just to make sure that we're all comparing apples to apples, I pulled the T2 values. Those are the comptroller values out on the comptroller's website to kind of look at a value increase for our school district. And when you look at the 2024, that's an estimated increase based on our certified tax value, so where we anticipate that to be. The importance of looking at taxable values, T2 values, is of course that is how the state assigns the local fund assignment. And I'm going to show you real quick because that's really kind of based on a balancing cup. Some people think when we get an increase in state value in property value that means there's additional funding for school districts, but that's really not the case. When there is an increase in property values, it's an adjustment in our cup. So our cup is filled based on formulas. The formulas are built off the type of students that we serve as well as the students coming to school. So we call that average daily attendance. That is what decides what our cup is. And then per the values is how we fill our cup. For example, if our values are up, the local taxes have a larger share of the cup, meaning state has less of a portion of the cup. And then you get to the far right where you collect more in the local share than you do your formulas say, then that money goes to the state. So what I'm trying to say is make sure everyone understands that when our property values go up, that does not mean the school district gets additional funding for day-to-day operations of a school district. And so that's really kind of what's depicted here. So our proposed budget is on the screen right now. There's $106.9 million in local funds. That's really made up those tax property values, makes a majority of that. State funding is $40 million, and majority of that is made up by the formulas, but there's about $8 million in there called TRS on behalf. That TRS on behalf is really just a booking entry. You're going to see an increase in expenditures and an increase of revenue by the exact same amount. It's just where we have to book where the state pays a portion of our teachers' retirement, and that's just a booking, and it's within the $40 million there. And then federal funds, our federal funds went down this year just because they did an adjustment to how much we could recoup in SHARS funding. So the district lost about $1 million in federal funding for that purpose. And then because we were receiving the ESSER funds, we were getting to charge indirect cost on those ESSER funds, which was attributed to about $500,000 in the federal funds. So we lost both of those funding sources in this next fiscal year. Our expenditures are going to attribute to about $153.3 million of our total expenditures, which brings on a 12-month budget a deficit of $4.9 million. I just kind of want to point out, how does our dollar work? Because I think it's very important to understand that over 60% of our dollars is spent directly into the classroom. And you might feel like that's not enough, but please look at the next category because there's 1,250 of every student. So this is how much money we get per student, and that's how it's laid out. So 1,250 is spent on maintenance and operation, but that is contributed by the utilities, gas, electricity to run a campus, as well as the insurance to run a campus. If anybody knows anything about inflation and what's going on in your households with insurance increases right now, same things happen with the school district. We were blessed that our insurance came in a little bit less this year, which was a huge blessing due to some capacity, and I'll touch on that later, but they're huge costs, so that's 1,250. Next is followed up by school leadership. That is the principals on campus, your counseling staff on campus, and then extracurricular and transportation makes up a majority of the cost of our students. So comparative expenditures, I'm going to go ahead and pass through this, but I just wanted to point out that 83% of our payroll is 83% of our total budget is actually payroll cost. The other is made up of contracted services, utility, insurance, and just day-to-day supplies for our campuses. And last year it was like 82.5, and I really had that on that slide. I'm sorry I didn't pull through. So the general fund expenditures for 24-25, you can kind of see how it lays out. Instruction is like directly in the classroom, and then you look at the next one, and that's really just your library. So 58.15% of the total budget is spent directly in the classroom, and then your library is followed close by. And then C&I development is really staff development for your teachers. And then, of course, you've got instructional leadership, campus administrator, guidance and counsel that kind of explain each other. Health services, of course, is the nurses on campus. Student transportation is just to transport the students, and that's really a good cost because our buses are actually coming out of bond funds. So those are just the day-to-day operations of our transportation facility. We have a little bit of money in food service in the general fund. A majority of that is budgeted in federal funds. Co-curricular, your extracurricular activities make up 3.82% of your budget. Your general administration make up 3.38%. And again, that maintenance and operation, which is your insurance, utilities, and things like that, 11.75. Security services, that's one that went up this year, just trying to get in compliance with legislation changes. And this will be a full year of budgeting for security services on every campus. That makes up a portion of our budget. Of course, there falls data processing. That's your computers and things on your campuses and the software to run those computers. Community services, and then your really kind of your final big one there is your appraisal office. And so that makes up the $153.5 million of expenditure budgets. So here is a total look at the proposed general fund. Of course, you've got your revenue and your expenditures, and if you were looking at it on a 12-month basis, which we're going to go ahead and adopt a 12-month budget, it's $4.9 million deficit. A lot of that is made up, of course, from those loss in ESSER funds, and then the 2% increase in our salaries, and that makes up a majority of that difference. Another thing that is in here is teacher incentive program. We see an increase in that, and so we've accounted for those funds. However, we're going to close our budget this year for 10 months and switch to a different fiscal year. So when you close your budget in a 10-month, we're going to stop in 10 months. What that means is our teachers have already worked a full year. Most of our administrators that are on an August 1 contract, they're going to work a majority of their year as well. And so because of that, we're going to expense those, but we're going to save on July 1 contracts, and we're going to save on utilities and insurance and hourly employees over the summer months. So that's going to make up that positive fund balance that we're going to see moving in. That's the $1.9 million fund balance that we're going to see added at the end of the fiscal year because we changed that year end to June 30th. So the next one I want to present is on our debt service fund. You're going to see that hold harmless I talked about in the local funds, and that's due to the homestead exemption change. And then you're also going to see the bond sale. So here's just a look of the debt service budget. We have a balanced budget. We're going to bring in $41.8 million in local. That's tax revenue. And then the state is going to help us out with $2.1 million. And the reason why they're doing that is because the homestead exemption changed. It's not based on a cup when you're talking about debt service. It's actually based on your property taxes that you bring in. So when they decrease how much property taxes we're going to bring in because the homestead went from 40 to 100,000, that's a loss of revenue for the school district. So what the state did is went in and covered for a majority of the loss that a school district was going to utilize with that loss in the homestead exemption. So the state is going to contribute $2.1 million to our debt service fund. Our other expenditures are just to pay down that debt. That's your payback of your bonds that you sell. And then the other uses is just set aside for refunds on tax purposes. The food service is 2% of midpoint is going to see a majority of the increases in that. Of course, they had the healthcare contribution increase. One thing that wasn't budgeted in the past that we're budgeting right now at the beginning of the school year is commodities. In the past, that's been about $613,000. That's going to be an increase in revenue and increase in expenditures as well. But it's going to inflate that budget a little bit higher than you've seen in previous years. And so I just want to bring that to your attention. And I also want to bring to your attention that this budget is based on no increase to meal costs. And that has been the case since we think about 2017 was the last time we actually increased meal costs for our families. And so I do want to point that out. Here's a look at the budget. It's a balanced budget as well. We anticipate to bring in $9.9 million and expense about $9.9 as well. So the next thing I would like to talk about is the tax rate. So again, I want to point out though, if you look at our tax rate, we know for sure it's the lowest, one of the lowest. Last year was actually the lowest by a little bit more, but in the lowest in 20 years. So this are really kind of historical lows that you're looking at. And I think if we get really curious and go back even further than that, we might be looking at more like a 30-year historical low. The tier rate is based on, our tax rate is a little bit crazy. It's based on a two-tier system, and that's for your maintenance and operation. The first part of that tier system is set by the legislation. It's called a maximum compressed rate. It's based on the growth of your property value to a floor. And our district hit the floor. The floor is 0.6169. That's the lowest that we can bring tier 1. So then there's a second tier, and they call that enrichment funding. It's made up of golden pennies and copper pennies. So the golden pennies are really, there's 5 pennies in there that there's 5 pennies that doesn't require voter approval, and then there's 3 additional ones that do. College Station has approved the 3 additional ones, and so we take advantage of the 8 golden pennies. They're golden pennies because the property in Austin ISD is worth higher than the property in College Station. So when we levy those pennies, we actually get what Austin gets for their pennies. So that's why they're called enrichment pennies. And so they're very, very valuable to a school district to make themselves very, competitive with everything. So the other is the 9 copper pennies. Right now, College Station does not access those pennies. We just access the 8. So the proposed tax rate on the maintenance and operation is the 69.69, but it's made up of 2 tiers. The proposed total property tax is $69.69 and then $27.60 for INS. With the INS, we promised our voters that we would go no more than 2 pennies when we did our bond presentations. We are only at 0.013. We think it'll hold there because we've got capacity within our debt structure to be able to sell those remaining bonds. We sold a set of bonds this school year for about $94 million, and we're going to sell those future bonds in the future. But our system is set up that has capacity that we're going to be able to slide those in and hopefully hold that tax rate where we're at right now. So that's a very big positive for our school district. So the tax rate that the district would be proposed in total would be 0.9729. Do I have any questions?
So going back, we've had no increase in state funding since 2019, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And we've actually lost a couple $1 million in federal funding. You've got ESSER that rolled off. We have inflation that's happened since then. I think the cost of our fuel for the buses is up a couple $100,000, if I recall correctly. And we get funded on average daily attendance, a snapshot date, not our enrollment.
Yes, sir.
So, and if you look at our budget, where we are now may not necessarily be where we are at the end of the year.
That's correct.
Where you have potential to actually balance the budget and not have a deficit potentially.
Potentially.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, those are great points, Dr. Payne, because none of us, I'm assuming none of us really want to have a deficit budget going forward. But, I mean, those are the things that are doing it, right? And put SHARS in that bucket, the loss of the SHARS funding as well. So I personally think we have come up with a budget that is going to work for us this next year, and obviously with the change to the 10-month to be able to make it work even better and add to the fund balance. But I still see it as a sustainability issue, as you talk about. And so I hope we continue to push back to where this money comes from, as you showed with the cups, right? We are not getting the extra money that comes locally. It just all balances out. The state gives us less. So, I mean, we're still we still have a place to improve, and we need to, because we should be able to keep up with that inflation and also be able to help our staff and teachers keep up with inflation. So I don't know if I'm saying this the wrong time, since we're at the hearing, not the vote that's coming up. But
I think that was my frustration in the workshop, is we can't make a bigger cup, right? In the private sector, you can go raise your prices, you can sell more. We're restrained by the state's guidelines. And like I said before, but they get a raise and our teachers get a cost of living adjustment.
I think that's a very important, because there's so many things I hear during the year where they're coming to us with higher cost, and we'll tell them, like, our cup is fixed. I mean, we can't, our funding is fixed, but they tell me they have to increase their staff costs and things like that. And so, yes, those are definitely things that we're faced with.
Their phrase is no new revenue, but you can show that we need the revenue would help, but we're not generating new revenue because we're raising the taxes. So it's it's word games.
I will say that we talked about this in workshop, but we do have to give some credit to the district because our students are still going to go to school and they're still going to be able to do the things that we want them to do at school. And so we have to give some credit for in the middle of a year where budgets feel tight, that you guys have done the work to make sure that our students are still going to go to school and have a great experience. So that's a good thing.
Well, it's always better to be proactive than reactive. And you mentioned in workshop, hypothetical about the state band or the high school bands and making state and this and that, and making sure that if both of them make it, we don't have to make a decision on who's going and who's not. Those are just being the proactive part of it, because I guess if our students weren't any good at anything, it'd be a little easier maybe. Hate to say that, but I mean, we're pretty good at it. I mean, our kids do great things, and that's throughout the district. And I don't want to sit up here and be one that holds back from doing it. So I appreciate y'all digging in deep on that part, and recognizing and bringing it to our attention that that's a possibility we've got to deal with. So, we've talked about it for a few months, deficits, and I'm with you, Ms. McAdams. No one ever wants to adopt a deficit budget, but it's the facts of life right now for this year, I guess. With just school districts in general in Texas, we can say it till we're blue in the face that the legislature's sessions they let us down in this and that, and we hope that the next session is better off. But knowing what the numbers could have been and where they're at, and knowing that in that deficit is about $2 million in teacher raises and things like that, and yes, could we? I think you mentioned it one time, Mr. Deckard. It's not a cost of living increase or anything. We get that, we understand, but I'm not going to sit up here and not give anything out. I can't go home at night for sure. But we and y'all as the administrators are doing everything we possibly can. And to Mr. Ben's point from workshop, yes, it stinks to talk about what could be if something doesn't happen, but we can't predict that. We can't funnel that. We just have to prepare the best way we can. And yes, you want to plan ahead, but we can only plan ahead so far. And so we have to go by the rules that TEA tells us. You're doing a fantastic job of bringing us up to speed, obviously with the 12-month, 10-month deal coming up. It's unfortunate, but we opened last week. We had a ton of kids on campus and a ton of happy kids on campus, and we're rocking and rolling. And I appreciate all y'all out there, administrators, teachers, faculty, staff, everybody. Thank y'all for getting us through last week, because even it's a 3-day week, I was glad to put my kids back in school. So I appreciate what y'all do, because I see it when they come home and they're excited. So thank y'all for that.
And to echo on that, to our community members, people who are here and care, it matters if you communicate with your legislators. It matters who you vote for. So please get out and encourage our legislators in the state to fund public education.
I just want to thank you we're being asked to do more with less, and I think you've done a great job of accomplishing that without sacrificing the quality of education that we're trying to accomplish here in CSISD.
Thank you. I'm excited about this next year. I think we'll continue to dive into it. I think we've got a great leadership team set up that we will always put kids first and what's right for education.
So I want to just beat this dead horse a couple more minutes. So when I get my tax statement, my statement from the appraisal district, and it shows that the value of my home has gone up 9.5%, and I think in College Station ISD, the average increase this year is 9.5%, right? Mm-hmm. That does not mean that CSISD is getting a 9.5% increase in property taxes too. Is that right?
True.
Okay. Because a lot of that money is going back to the state of Texas through recapture, compression, and so forth. So in fact, how much are we capped pretty much on how much of an increase we can get each year from property tax revenue?
You're capped at 10% that will flow through, yes. Your values might go up, but they only can charge you tax on a 10% increase in your value.
No, I meant that the district can collect for just in general.
Oh, yes, sir. So the tier system is set up where what happens is the cup, for example, is filled with basically formula funding. And so we determine what kids are going to school, what kids are actually showing up at school, and they're typically, excuse me, education. So are we educating a special needs kid, a career and technology kid, and things? And that decides what our cup level is. And then the state comes in and says, based on those comptroller certified values, your T2 values, what your local share of that cup is. And so based on those, they'll figure out with the MCR, which is the maximum contact rate, they'll multiply that times your certified values, and they'll tell you that's the size that that you locally have to fill in that cup. And if there's anything that doesn't get you to the top of the cup, the state will come in and fund that additional money. And if that local share is higher than your cup, that money that flows out gets picked up and sent out to other school districts and called in recapture. So it doesn't matter with our values going up. If our values go up 10%, then that just means our cup changes the way it looks. But we don't get additional funding.
Okay. And so whether inflation was 8% in 2022 and it was almost 5% in 2023, that does not get necessarily the formula for our cup does not change based upon inflation and all these other increased expenses that school districts have, right?
That is correct. The legislative looked at that in the past, but right now we're not even funding on enrollment. So when we look at enrollment, we actually fill the class based on enrollment, but then we get funded on average daily attendance. That is at $6,160 per student. And then the additional comes from the special programs that the kids participate in to make up a weighted average daily attendance is what they call it. But there's not an increase. No, there's not an inflationary factor built into the formulas at all. The last time we were able to see an increase in the funding formulas on a per student basis was 2019. We have seen a little bit of funding. For example, we got $15,000 per campus for safety money. That did not cover what it cost for us to put a safety officer on those campuses. And so that's attributing to the deficit as well as some of the unfunded mandates that a school district is seeing in addition to no additional funding.
So that all goes back to what Dr. Payne was saying with using this opportunity with the new legislative session coming up to talk to our legislators and let them know how important this is because yeah, it's very frustrating for me as a taxpayer to see these increases in taxes and and on a local level we don't benefit from that to a great extent. And so I think I just hope more people realize that and more people will communicate with their Texas legislators about that particular issue.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll open for public comments regarding the 24-25 budget and tax rate, if anyone is here to speak on that. Okay, we will close the public hearing. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. J2, consideration and possible adoption of the 24-25 general fund, food services, and debt service fund. I don't know that we can go back in our agenda currently. So we can have you sign up at our next meeting, as we've got to keep moving through our agenda for the budget and things like that. But I appreciate it. Can I do, I don't think I, yeah. No, I can't adjust the agenda based on that. All right. No, sir, there's not. No, sir, it's an item on the agenda, item E. There's not an agenda item for it, for hearing of citizens at the end. No, sir, I cannot move from the agenda as stated. So, yes, sir, you were given it 72 hours prior. So, we're going to have to move on. Thank you, sir. J2, consideration possible adoption of the 24-25 general fund, food services, and debt service fund budgets as presented in public hearing. Ms. Wilson.
Mr. Horick, Dr. Harkrider, it's the administrative recommendation to approve the 24-25 food service, debt service, and general fund budget as presented in public hearing.
Motion to approve is presented.
A second.
Motion by Dr. Payne, second by Ms. Ege. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. That will bring us to J3, consideration and possible adoption of the 24-25 College Station ISD tax rate and approval of resolution. Ms. Wilson.
The district published a notice of public meeting to discuss the budget and proposed tax rate in the newspaper on August 10th. That proposed was $69.69 for maintenance and operation and an interest sinking of $27.6. So that is what we were presented tonight, and that's what the board would like to adopt. If so, it's the administrative recommendation that the Board of Trustee of College Station Independent School District approve the resolution to adopt a maintenance and operation tax rate of $69.69 and an interest and sinking tax rate of $27.6 for a total of $97.29, and the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of $97.29, which is effectively a 2.8% increase in tax rate.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Payne, second by Ms. Simmons. Any further question or discussion?
Just a quick comment that we didn't talk much about the rate itself, but really I think we are getting a lot of bang for our buck for just over 1 cent raise in the INS for, you know, the large amount of bond money that our voters approved and all the work that we're going to be able to do with those funds. So, I mean, thanks for, of course, the taxpayers for approving that, but also, I mean, the administration and the team that's going to use that money wisely, so we will be able to maintain that low tax rate that you talked about. So,
thank you.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Item J4, consider authorizing the superintendent to renew insurance coverage for the property and casualty, general liability, auto liability, and physical damage school leaders, underground storage, and crime fidelity for 2024-25 fiscal year. Ms. Wilson.
Okay. So this is a little bit of exciting news. We go out with ANCO Insurance and Company, and we receive bids on over 61 various carriers to come up with our plan. One of the great things that we do with property and casualty is we layer the plan that allows us to be insured because we're such a large insurance. We have over $626 million to be insured. So what happened this year, they were able to expand those layers. In doing so, we were able to decrease the cost of property and casualty, which is really kind of unheard of right now. So it's really a big blessing. So property and casualty, we went down $336,000. And then the other ones went up marginally for a total decrease of $312,072, and that's over a 12-month period of insurance. Do I have any questions or concerns?
I have no idea what she's talking about.
That's scary.
Motion to approve is presented.
We have a motion by Dr. Payne. Second by Mr. Ben. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. That will bring us to item N, adjournment.